We're back with you at 25 to 4, but in the meantime, another change of sport. This time it's off for F1, 5 Live Formula 1, and it's practice 3 in Saudi Arabia. We say very good afternoon to Harry Benjamin.
Good afternoon, Kevin. Thanks for that. We will be back with you after practice. And, well, from leather on willow to rubber on asphalt, we're ready for final practice ahead of qualifying under the lights later on this evening. We're in Saudi Arabia, southwest of the capital, Riyadh, for this one at the Jeddah Corniche circuit on the waterfront next to the Red Sea is where we find this incredibly quick circuit. Qualifying later on, as I say, will be under the lights, cooler conditions right now for this final practice session. We're in the heat of the day. Air temperature 29.2 degrees. Track temperature before cars have been out 52.5 degrees. So that will heat up. But alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, in the commentary box is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. And for the rest of the weekend, delighted to be joined by McLaren's Formula E driver Sam Bird. Afternoon, Sam.
Good afternoon, Harry. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Nice to have you back with us.
Happy to be here.
And rather apt, really, because, well, it's McLaren who look like they are a step ahead of the rest once again.
Absolutely. They look quick on one-lap pace, but also it's a bit intimidating for everybody else, isn't it, with their long-run pace being so formidable around this track. Track temperatures at the moment are, as we said, up unrepresentative to what we're going to be seeing later in qualifying. So this session probably doesn't mean as much as FP2, but it'll still be interesting to see what everybody does in FP3.
Yeah, at the end of FP2 yesterday, it was Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri clear at the head of the field. The fastest time was a 1:28.267 under the lights. Max Verstappen was third, Charles Leclerc fourth for Ferrari, and then Carlos Sainz for Williams was actually up there. Good running so far from the Williams team, rounding out the top five. Andrew, you were crunching the numbers yesterday in FP2, and we've said it feels formidable, really, the McLaren advantage right now, not only in the qualifying pace, but also on the long runs. What are we actually seeing there? What is the data showing us?
Well, in second practice, when we normally get the best long runs, they were interrupted by Yuki Tsunoda's crash, so we only got Piastri against Verstappen as an equivalent there, and that was more than a second, Piastri's advantage over Verstappen. In the first practice, the teams also do long running. We don't normally pay that much attention to that, and especially not in Jeddah, where, as we were saying, for this session it's held in the daylight as opposed to at night, so track temperatures are higher. But then again, McLaren's had an advantage of about 7/10. It looks like that actually, although Verstappen was the next best driver over one lap, in terms of long run pace, it's kind of Leclerc and Russell who are the next best after McLaren, pretty much indistinguishable from each other, and about 7/10 or so behind the McLarens on average, and Verstappen behind them.
Well, let's see what unfolds over the course of this practice session, and then we will go qualifying later on. You can hear that on the BBC Sport website and app, and on your smart speaker. We'll be on air from 5 to 6 this evening, ahead of the green light going on at 6 o'clock for that session. Sam, I'm interested, while we wait for the clock to tick down to FP3 kicking off, I'm interested to get your perspective on the McLaren driver dynamic at the moment. It was a flawless run for Oscar Piastri in Bahrain, and he's so cool, calm and collected on the radio. Every time he just sounds so chilled out, and we've seen from Lando Norris almost the opposite. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's not afraid to show his emotions, and he's always his worst critic. How do you think that is going to fare as these two look like they are going to be battling for the World Championship?
So I don't see Lando wearing his heart on his sleeve and admitting and holding his hand up and saying, look, I got that wrong, as a weakness. I think it's actually a strong point of his to be able to go, guys, that wasn't good enough from me. He'll work on things like that with a mind coach. He'll have people in his team to speak to with regards to how he honestly feels, because I think there's a lot of drivers out there that will put on a brave front but actually go back and self-reflect and think, I didn't do a good enough job. He's able to be big enough and man enough to say, guys, it wasn't good enough, and he's done that. With regards to Oscar Piastri, you're absolutely right. He is super cool, and he's driving sensationally at the moment. The one thing I would say is that he's got massive confidence in the car in qualifying right now, and that is absolutely key. He's clearly got the best car at the moment, along with Lando, and at the moment it seems like whichever of them out-qualifies the other, the person that puts it in front will win. It seems like McLaren is the quickest car, but in traffic it doesn't work quite as well. So if Lando wants to win this race, ideally he's got to do it from pole.
Well, and we've seen, though, that can be critical with the dirty air that seems to be rearing its head all of a sudden this kind of final year of the regulations we've got. Qualifying under the lights, particularly not only for the dirty air reasons, but being at a street track like Jeddah where overtaking opportunities are difficult, qualifying tonight is going to be hypercritical.
Well, we've seen it in the past. We saw it quite a few years ago now with Hamilton and Bottas at Mercedes, where they made the fastest car comfortably for a number of years, but there was one specific year where unless they qualified at the front, it was very, very difficult to come through the pack, and I think Bottas struggled with that quite a few times. I think we're seeing something similar with McLaren. They've made the best car, but when it's put in traffic, it's very, very challenging for them to come through.
Green light is on at the end of the pit lane. FP3 has started, by the way, but there is not a huge rush out onto the track. 59 minutes and 8 seconds remain as a couple of cars have gone out. Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber, no surprise, he's gone out there because he missed the entirety of FP2, which will really set him on the back foot after a fuel leak Sauber found on that car, so they had to take the whole session to repair that, so he'll be looking to get crucial miles under his belt. Jack Doohan has also joined him, so not surprising really, actually, Sam, to see the rookies out there. Even in a session like this, they want to get track time because you need the confidence here.
This is a confidence track. It really, really is, Harry. It's so fast and flowing. So the people that haven't been here before in a Formula One car, you want to get as many laps as possible under your belt. The other driver, who is one of the most experienced out there, that will be chomping at the bit to get going and improve both himself and his race car, is Lewis Hamilton. I feel like he's had, since that sprint race win in China, that seems like a long time ago, because it feels like he's just not comfortable or confident with that Ferrari car. Well, at least not as confident as his counterpart Charles Leclerc.
After yesterday's running, Hamilton was saying he's just trying to get into the top 10, and again we're seeing this repeat of quite downbeat interviews from Lewis Hamilton. His qualifying is his weakness at the moment. His racecraft is there. We saw him come through the field in Bahrain, and I feel like Ferrari really maximised everything they could have done from that race with Charles Leclerc, especially the safety car, and the strategy was something that they had to work out in the final points. But also, just looking back at Hamilton's stats here in Saudi Arabia, of course he qualified on pole in 2021 and took the race win, but actually his last 3 qualifyings in Jeddah have not been great. He was 16th, then he was 8th, and then 8th again. So this hasn't always been a track, if you look back to China where he has such good form, it's not been a track that he's always gelled at. And I think Hamilton, when you're coming into a new team, still finding his way.
It seems that way. We're used to seeing a Lewis Hamilton winning from the front, but over the last 3 years we haven't seen that, and that can be quite damaging for him mentally. That sprint race win in Shanghai will have given him a boost, but it needs to be repeated, Harry. It's not, one result, you get that boost, but if you can back that up with great results afterwards, that's when your positivity can really start to change. I feel like one result doesn't necessarily do that.
Well, let's see if Hamilton can find some more confidence as Saturday unfolds. 56 minutes and 26 seconds remain. It's Bortoleto out there along with Jack Doohan. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin has also emerged out on track. Lance Stroll came out as well, and he, along with his teammate, are both on the hard tyre, Doohan on the soft and Bortoleto on the medium. Bortoleto coming across the line now for his first lap time on the board, and he goes fastest because there's no other laps. It's a 1:32.160. This is the sound of Jack Doohan making his way into the braking zone through the left-hander round the final corner, almost touching the wall on the exit. We've seen so many cars get oh so close there, but actually it was yesterday, Sam, that we saw one crash there for Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull, but he hit the wall on the way in, on the inside. What did you make of that manoeuvre?
It's quite easy to do, Harry. It really, really is easy to do. I've done it a couple of times in chicanes where the wall just sort of sticks out. Some of these corners don't have a perfectly smooth inside wall, so when they place the barriers, there's these little edges that stick out, and he's clipped one of them and broken the front left steering arm, which has sent him into the barrier on the outside. We've just seen a onboard of Jack Doohan. Now it looked like he's suffering a little bit from a little bit of rear locking mid to end of the braking zone, which then pushes the front mid corner. So clearly the rear tyres starting to complain in these hot temperatures that we're seeing this afternoon on the soft compound, and then the front's giving up after the oversteer.
Now, you raced here recently in Formula E, a slightly altered version of the track, and we're just seeing, because only 5 drivers now, Esteban Ocon has gone out to the track, only 5 drivers are out there, everybody else is still in the pits, and we saw yesterday Kimi Antonelli, we've just seen it now with George Russell and Carlos Sainz. They're all, they've got these flasks that I believe are filled with crushed ice, and they're just chomping away a spoonful at a time with a bit of ice. I'm presuming that's a way of keeping cool in this heat, but is that a normal thing to do?
See, when I watched that yesterday, I didn't think there was crushed ice that was just white rice.
White rice?
It was white rice.
What?
And Nico Rosberg used to do the same thing. Nico Rosberg, before going out, 20 minutes before going out in the car, he had a big bowl of white rice and he'd just be shoveling it in.
So they're all shoveling in a bit of rice?
Well, it's complex carbohydrates, so it'll give you prolonged energy. So they've got the cool vest on, which will be keeping their trying to get their core temperature down and also their surface temperature down, and then they're absorbing complex carbohydrate calories.
But what happened to not eating for an hour before exercise?
Isn't it like when you go swimming as well?
Yeah,
you can't eat half an hour before you go in the pool.
But that's more that's more for like runners, when you're bouncing up and down. You've got the food, so mind you, you've got a lot of G-force in these things, but you need the energy. You need to take on calories, because you burn a heck of a lot of calories while driving these race cars.
Well, there you go. Well, they're shoveling something in, that's for sure, and they're in no hurry to get out there. It's Doohan, Bortoleto, the 2 Aston Martins, and now the 2 Haas cars of Ocon and Behrman that have emerged onto the circuit. I just want to go back to McLaren, Andrew, because we've spoken a lot about the driver dynamic, and Lando Norris felt uncomfortable and not all at ease in Bahrain. So far this weekend, conversely, he has looked a lot more comfortable.
He has, and what's been interesting is that although he was fastest in first practice in Bahrain, and the same again, well, he wasn't fastest in first practice here because Pierre Gasly was, but I'm just ignoring that for convenience. But he repeated that performance in P2. And he did make a couple of mistakes, as Abby pointed out yesterday, Abby Pulling, when she was doing the commentary in Sam's seat. But he looked a lot more comfortable to me, Norris, in the car yesterday than he ever really did in Bahrain. The point being, he was managing to put the laps together pretty much every time he wanted to, even if there were some mistakes in between. So, I mean, look, it was only Friday practice. Things might all change today, and I don't think we can pay too much attention to this session, although we are doing, in terms of a read on comfort and everything, because, you know, the track temperatures are going to at least 20 degrees Celsius higher than they will be in qualifying. But he said after, it was the way he talked afterwards as well. He described it as a decent day, and much more positive than he was in Bahrain, just generally. I think he's been struggling all year fundamentally. Okay, he won in Australia after putting it on pole there, but at most races this year, Piastri's been the slightly more impressive McLaren driver. It's been quite a shift from last year, when it was definitely Norris who had the edge on pace, especially in qualifying. It's early days still this weekend, but it does look like Norris has made a step.
I mean, this car that McLaren have made, it can be tricky to drive. It is the quickest car out there, but it is a confidence car as well. And Oscar Piastri, definitely over the last 3-4 weekends, has certainly have the edge with regards to the confidence with extracting more performance in qualifying.
50 minutes and 58 seconds, by the way. Ocon, Doohan, Bortoleto. Doohan just coming to the pits. Bortoleto third. Alonso and Stroll have been out there, but not with a representative time on the board. Behrman and Hadjar have now emerged onto the circuit, but still not many movers and shakers from the big guns.
So, Harry, I'm going to bring Sam in on this. I'm going to ask him. So, as I understand it, Sam, what Norris has been struggling with is a particular part of the corner entry where the car's not rotating in the way that he wants it to. He's struggling with a bit too little front end grip, basically. But obviously Piastri's not suffering in the same way. Can you explain why, with the same car, you know, the same McLaren, two different drivers with two different driving styles, why they would experience a different behaviour from that car?
Every driver has different characteristics of how they brake. So most of these drivers will have a nice brake shape, but how you blend off the brake pedal and then what you require as a driver right at the end of the brake pedal is really, really critical and really key. It's like a feel thing. So what Oscar Piastri likes versus what Lando Norris likes might be slightly different, the way that they blend off, and that area right towards the end of braking can be really, really critical. I know that McLaren's recently, for the last 4 or 5 years, have been very, very sensitive to that last bit of braking input. So the way that you blend off then absolutely depicts how you're going to get through the corner. If you come off the brake quite abruptly, then you could get a little bit of understeer. If you hold on to the brake for too long, you can get a little bit of understeer as well. And there's this small window where the front end feels absolutely spot on, and maybe Lando's suffering in that small area.
And that's the rotation phase that everyone talks about.
Absolutely, yes.
Drivers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's where you've then put a lot of pitch into the car through the heavy braking, and then as you're blending off the brake so that you don't lock up, because we don't do this sort of big rectangular block, we tend to do this nice triangle shape as we're blending off the brake. Ollie Behrman.
Oh, the front axle is way stronger than yesterday. That's a good thing.
Copy, Ollie.
Ollie Behrman reporting a stronger front axle. That will go away as the temperature subsides a little bit and he'll pick up rear end grip, but good signs for Ollie Behrman. But yeah, I feel like it's that critical last phase of braking that Lando might not be quite comfortable with at the moment.
And just to be clear for everybody, when Sam talks about rectangles and triangles, he's talking about a graph, a data graph, basically a line that's showing brake input.
Exactly. So driving these cars with these huge carbon brakes and a lot of downforce, a lot of grip from the tyres, you want to stamp on the brake pedal as hard as literally you can at the beginning of brake, and then gently ease off the brake pedal as you get closer to the apex.
That was the voice of the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. That was proper nerd chat. That was proper technical.
Well, yes.
That was good stuff, guys. Well done.
If you don't want that in practice, when do you want it?
You don't want. That's what you get when you're on 5 Sports Extra for FP3 in the daylight, where it doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Inform, educate, and entertain. Harry,
the BBC's remit.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a question just on, obviously, you're gaining something by being out on the track, right? But we've had this before, like Bahrain last week. These night races, you basically end up with 2 irrelevant practice sessions, FP1 and FP3. Is there not some way we can alter the schedule to just delay it slightly?
But you are still... Sorry, Benny.
No, you go, Sam.
You are still collecting valuable data. You know, the teams and drivers will know, right, well, if the car feels like this in these specific conditions, then we'll be in a great window as the cooler temperatures come in later on this evening. So typically, if you've got a little bit of oversteer now and the front end is quite reactive, I think that's the kind of balance you want right now. If you've got an understeery car in these conditions, it would be a bit of a worry.
Okay, so they're not going to start changing things up then. And also, we've got a packed schedule with Formula 2 also here and some Porsche racing as well to try and squeeze it. And you need a certain amount of time before you can qualify. The teams need to obviously have a break and get the car ready.
Yeah, and let's remember, in qualifying, this track is going to ramp up massively as we progress through the minutes in Q1, Q2 and Q3, and also session to session in qualifying later. This track is going to get quick and we're going to see some absolutely electric lap times.
Well, it is starting to get a little bit busier on the track with 46 minutes and 13:12 11 seconds remaining. It's Jack Doohan who's just gone to the top of the times on the soft tyre, a 1:29.6 for the Australian rookie. Then it's Behrman. The two Ferraris are now out on track. Lewis Hamilton has gone third fastest ahead of teammate Charles Leclerc. They're 7/10 adrift though on that soft tyre. Then it's Ocon and Bortoleto who went out on the medium tyre. He is sixth fastest. Those are the six representative times. Then come the two Aston Martins who went out early doors and are now back in the pits. Hajar, Lawson, the two McLarens have now come out onto the track. Still no movement from the Red Bulls of Verstappen and Tsunoda, the Gasly Alpine, the two Mercedes drivers, Sainz in the Williams, along with his teammate Albon and Nico Hulkenberg's Sauber, as Piastri just slows down coming through the final corner, the left-hander, to find himself a bit of clear track, puts his foot down on the accelerator, up through the gears. The DRS line comes, the letterbox on the rear wing flies open as he now heads down towards turn one, the first chicane, a quick left right, so easy to snatch a break. We saw cars actually hitting the inside wall there and having to run deep. Not such the case for Oscar Piastri. Runs out wide on the exit through turn three, getting up to 270 kilometres an hour before he touches the brakes through the left-hander. So close to the walls here. Every inch counts. You do not want to leave anything on the table, but of course you don't want to chuck it all away in free practice 3. You want to save yourself that final bit of margin for qualifying, Sam, or do you need to know that you're able to push it before it gets to that point?
Oh, he'll be pushing, don't you worry, and he's 2.5 tenths up in sector 1. That McLaren just looks so good in change of direction and in the higher speed corners at the moment, working beautifully underneath Oscar Piastri. He swings it through the middle sector. Now he'll be glancing down. He's got quite a long time now until he gets to turn number 22, 23. Braking now for 22. Fires it across the curb on the exit. 4.5 tenths up now on Jack Doohan's time that he did on the second lap, I believe, on the Alpine. He'd already gone for one lap, so decent time from Doohan, but we expect this to be passed by quite some margin from Oscar Piastri.
Final corner to go for Piastri, keeps it neat and tidy and to the line. It's fastest in the first sector, fastest in the middle sector, and it's fastest overall by over half a second, a 1:29.118. Teammate Lando Norris is also out on track now. He's just coming towards the end of the middle sector. He's now in that run from turn 19 through 20, where it slightly flicks to the left, then to the right before you get to that quick, it's not really even a chicane, but it's a left-hander, then feeds you out subtly to the right, out through turn 23, arcing through 24, and then you get the DRS as you then head slightly to the left. It's just a slight turn on the steering wheel, counts as a corner though, fastest part of the circuit before you touch the brakes into the final corner. 27 corners on this track, make up over 6.1 kilometres of it. You're getting up to speeds of over 330 kilometres an hour. The average lap speed is north of 250 kilometres an hour, and as Norris comes across the line, less than 1/10 of a second separating himself from Piastri, but he's not quicker, slots into second after their first soft tyre runs. But once again, it's becoming rather familiar this season now. It's the two McLarens out in front and ahead of the rest of the field. Now, from race control, Jack Doohan failing to follow race directions instructions.
So we've had another warning for the start-finish line infringement again, so we just need to be very careful there.
Okay, can someone show me on the onboard, please?
Hey, firm, we'll get a screenshot for you.
Now that's Jack Doohan. Now I believe as he's coming towards the line, he's actually running along the white and blue painted lines which separate the bit of runoff area that is between the main start-finish straight and then the pit lane entry. You are not allowed to put a wheel on there. If you do that in qualifying, your lap time is deleted, and the stewards, they're not liking that Doohan's done that a few too many times, because you want to try and shorten the distance, don't you, to the line as much as you can to try and keep your time in it. But Doohan just crossing the line ever so slightly.
Yeah, it'd be a silly way to lose a lap in qualifying, wouldn't it? You see drivers doing it in Monza as well, trying to shortcut the line to the end of the lap, but he's not going to be gaining anything from being a couple of inches over.
Well, the sun still shining over this Jeddah Corniche circuit. Air temperature 29 degrees, track temperature at 50.6 degrees as now Max Verstappen has emerged onto the circuit. He has put the soft tyre on. Now, in yesterday's running, Verstappen and Red Bull looked quick in the qualifying runs, but fell away during their race pace, eating up their tyres a bit too much. I don't think we're going to see much from the soft tyre, really, because I think that is up and down the grid, just struggling to keep that in the right temperature range.
Guys, we really need to get rid of the drink system. Like, it's flying, I have water flying around my helmet, it's annoying.
Understood, Isaac.
Isaac Hadjar with another water drink system issue. Piastri had one with Charles Leclerc a few races ago. It's clearly something a lot of the teams are trying to get on top of.
Hadjar likes a drama, doesn't he, on a Saturday? If it's not his drinks, it's the belts. But he's doing a really good job, I've got to say. I'm quite impressed with the young man over his short stint in Formula One so far. With regards to Max Verstappen coming across the line now, purple in the first two sectors and goes fastest ahead of Oscar Piastri. Now, Max Verstappen is one of, if not the best qualifiers I think we've ever seen in Formula One, and he's absolutely superb at racing as well. So it's no surprise to me that he can fight with the McLarens, but the McLaren is just the better car in a race scenario. So Max Verstappen has to push the car harder in a race environment to try and keep up. That means that he's putting his tyres under more stress, and that's why the tyre life simply isn't there on the Red Bull. He's out driving that car, and Piastri and Norris don't have to push as hard in the race for the same speed.
Let's see what the two Ferraris have got to offer on their second runs on the soft tyre. Now Verstappen has gone quickest, final corner for Hamilton, and has a little bit of a wobble on the exit. He's fastest though of anybody in the middle sector. Leclerc 2/10 up on Verstappen in the middle sector. Hamilton pops it into third, a 10th away from Max Verstappen. His teammate is out there coming into the final sector now, just approaching a bit of traffic in the form of Lance Stroll. He's managed to get through the Canadian's Aston Martin, now seeks the final corner, almost loses the rear end, has to dial the steering wheel the complete opposite way to balance it out to the line for Charles Leclerc, losing time in that final sector. Still goes fastest by 2/10 to 1:28.860.
Well, when you said he loses time, he still went green in that final sector, didn't he? But that was not ideal for both Ferraris there. They get to the apex well, but when they apply the power, the rear tyres just say no thank you, and around the rear came, and that was really, really close to the wall for both Lewis Hamilton, but even more so for Charles Leclerc, really hanging it out there.
Bit of a heart-in-mouth moment for Charles Leclerc. Is that the same for Isaac Hadjar, who is just trying to find his way around the Ferrari, both going fairly slowly and ambling around sector one. But that's another thing here, isn't it? It's Piastri's going again now, fastest of anybody in the first sector. Traffic management is going to be crucial for qualifying. We've already had a few near misses in practice.
Traffic management's going to be key, but also choosing when to run and where to be for that final lap, because it just looks like the track just ramps up and ramps up. These tyres now have done multiple laps, and after a cool down you can go again and improve your lap time. How rare is that to see in Formula One, where a tyre, you can take a soft compound tyre, or the softest compound that Pirelli bring to a race weekend, and you can improve on a second lap. That doesn't happen very often. I think this evening's qualifying is going to be scintillating because of the fact that the tyre can continue to improve, as we see Oscar Piastri improving to go 2.5 tenths quicker than what Charles Leclerc did.
Lovely sell of the coverage as well there, Sam.
That's what they pay me for.
Exactly, that's why they give you the big bucks. And you can hear that from 5 to 6 this evening, build up ahead of 6 o'clock for Q1 getting underway. So Piastri's gone back to the top. We're going to see what the Mercedes have got as well. And the two, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, they've put on the soft tyre. Lando Norris is also out there again as well on the soft tyre, going well in the first sector. Let's see what he's got now. He's coming into the final sector. Russell, who has had an excellent start to the season, his best in his career on the soft tyre, his first attempt, puts it up into 6th spot. That's 7 tenths adrift from Piastri's quickest time. Norris is actually down on time in the middle sector. Antonelli comes across in the other Mercedes to put himself inside the top 10, indeed 10th, but is immediately shuffled out because Carlos Sainz in the Williams has popped himself up into 10th. Norris then down on time in the middle sector. He is currently 4th fastest, but he's found time overall with a blisteringly fast first sector and puts himself up into 2nd. just a tenth and a half away from Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, so interesting, isn't it, that yesterday Norris looked to have an edge, and today, as I was saying, don't count your chickens. Today it's turned around completely. Piastri, they've only done a couple of laps, obviously, but on both of them, Piastri's been that little bit quicker. Interestingly, on both those McLaren laps, on their second runs, they were both slower in the middle sector than they'd been on their previous lap, having set their fastest first sector time, and then improved the lap time with a quicker final sector. So even the McLarens are having to manage their tyres a little bit over one lap. Here's Tsunoda.
Thanks, guys, for the call.
Yeah, so that's a reference to his crash yesterday. Red Bull actually weren't finished rebuilding that car until after the start of the session. I got a message from the Red Bull media chat about that. So I don't think they've lost the curfew today, but it's obviously been a bit on the edge to get it ready. So it's quite a significant amount of damage, it would seem, from that accident yesterday at the end of second practice.
Meanwhile, the man that Yuki Tsunoda replaced, Liam Lawson, is all at sea in the Racing Bulls and having to cut across the chicane at turn 1. Lawson currently down in 13th. Tsunoda on his first soft tyre lap could only go 16th fastest. I wonder though if he's just leaving a little bit more margin as he gets back up to speed in that Red Bull.
Most of cars with margin to the apex there.
But you would though, wouldn't you?
I think he's got to do a bit better than that.
But I mean, having to rebuild not only the car but as a driver as well after he fessed up, bit of a silly mistake for him, an easy one to make, but how do you rebuild from that as a driver? You just got to own it and move on.
He's experienced enough to jump straight back in the car and be on it. The only question mark would be, is the car back to its absolute best if all the corners are absolutely pointing in the right direction? I'm sure they will. They'll put it on a thing called a flat patch at the track. Red Bull will have made sure everything is millimetre, or even better than millimetre, perfect. But even so, as a driver, you're still just questioning, is it absolutely right? Is that the right amount of turning that I need for this corner? But he didn't have a high-speed crash. If he'd crashed in sector 2, a massive crash that had taken out the car, your confidence would be shot. He's had a little dink with the inside wall. He'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, and he'll go again as well. This is the sound of Kimi Antonelli. This is a replay that we're just having. He's making his way through that high speed towards the end of the first sector in the middle. You really do take a little bit of curb there as he comes up, rises up over the crest. And sparks fly from the other side.
He doesn't like his flaws, does he? He doesn't like his flaws. Every round so far, he's been going through flaws, Kimi Antonelli. I mean, he's been doing a solid job all year for a complete rookie. Who's basically only had one season in anything he's ever done. But yeah, certainly there's a lot of floor damage going on that side of the garage.
What have you made of his teammate George Russell's start to the season?
Brilliant. And do you know what? I think that it's unjust that there's rumours swirling around, and I think they're fairly false rumours about Verstappen being unhappy at Red Bull, and would that mean that Russell's seat is up for grabs? I mean, George Russell has basically taken over that so-called number 1 role brilliantly at Mercedes, and he's had 3 podiums in 5 races. Been doing a really solid job.
Yeah, he certainly has. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, well, it is Lando Norris who leads that, 77 points. He's 3 clear of Oscar Piastri. Then comes Max Verstappen. Then it's George Russell in 4th, with Charles Leclerc rounding out the top 5. And actually, Kimi Antonelli also in the top 6. Bahrain, first time he didn't get any points on the board, and he was rather done over there with the strategy towards the end of that. In the Constructors' Championship, it's McLaren who lead the way with a 58-point advantage over Mercedes, who are second. Red Bull are third. Then it's Ferrari, with Haas actually best of the rest in that midfield battle. They are 5th ahead of Williams. Aston Martin, Racing Bulls are 8th. Alpine got their first points on the board with Pierre Gasly's 7th place finish last time out in Bahrain. So they are now in 9th. They're actually tied on points with Sauber, but because Alpine have the better race finishes on countback, they go ahead. So Sauber now to the bottom of the table. And that best of the rest battle, well, in the Constructors at least, Haas are winning it. But right now, in terms of the performance we've seen so far on the track, I'm going to say it's a Williams and an Alpine battle right now for those finer points-paying results in the lower half of the top 10, as we're just seeing and hearing.
Let's go blind or... Yeah. Cool.
That was Oscar Piastri having a near miss with the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda, and Tsunoda dawdling a little bit in the middle of the track and then moving across, and there was Oscar Piastri getting squeezed to the wall and had to get out of it.
we're going back to best of the rest.
Yeah, sorry.
Harry,
so
that's all right.
Williams, I'm thinking Williams Alpine for this weekend.
I agree. I think that this circuit is suiting Carlos Sainz really, really nicely. He looks like a driver that could be contending kind of the back end of the top 10, whereas we've seen recently Isaac Hadjar, really doing a great job and putting the car kind of 6th, 7th, 8th on the grid. I think that slot is looking like it's going towards someone like a Pierre Gasly or a Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, at the moment, in terms of who's winning that battle, Doohan is 9th ahead of Gasly. Sainz is down in 12th with Albon down in 15th. But we will reiterate that this is not going to be a carbon copy of the conditions we'll get come qualifying in a few hours' time, when the sun will have set, the temperatures cooled, and the floodlights will illuminate all 27 turns of this 6.1-kilometre Jeddah Corniche circuit with half an hour left on the clock. It's the two McLarens showing their advantage once more. Oscar Piastri fastest by almost 0.3 of a second to his teammate Lando Norris, but Norris is going again, making his way through turns 23 and 24 now, approaching that long run down with the DRS towards the final corner. Leclerc is 3rd, Verstappen and Hamilton round out the top 5. Russell, Hülkenberg is 7th ahead of Behrman, then it's Doohan and Gasly the top 10. Ocon is 11th, Alonso, Sainz, Antonelli and Lawson the top 15. Albon is 16th ahead of Tsunoda, Stroll, Hadjar and Bortoletto, the 20 drivers all in this session, and Norris comes across the line, and though he was looking good in the first couple of sectors, ends up 2/10 drift. That final sector just losing him time.
I don't think Lando's looking seriously quick, as is Oscar Piastri, but from what we've seen, I don't think Lando's put together his best lap yet. It seems like if you look at his theoretical lap, if you put together all the micro sectors, I think Lando technically is a little bit faster than Oscar, but Oscar's done 2 or 3 laps that are just really solid and very quick. Lando looks like he can be quick and then will make a small error, as we saw there at the final corner, a front left lock-up, the inside wheel just locking up slightly, running wide, and then late on power has cost him a 10th and a half. And that's going to be the difference this evening with regards to who gets pole and who doesn't.
And that, Sam, you've hit the nail on the head there. That has been the problem that Norris has had over the last few races. It's consistency of lap time. He can do the sectors, but he can't. He's struggling to put together consistent series of fast laps.
Good lap from Tsunoda. Sorry, just to say there, he's just popped himself up into 5th, much closer to Verstappen, but his teammate is now on another run. Also said Red Bull have said about Tsunoda after this weekend they're going to run him an intensive simulator program after Saudi Arabia as he continues to try and understand this, what we now all know is a fairly tricky car to drive. But right now, well, at least over 1 lap pace, that Red Bull seems to be improved. Verstappen has just gone fastest in the middle sector, around the final corner now for the Dutchman. The DRS flies open as the sun glints off that Red Bull car, and he finds time to put himself up into 3rd spot, nearly 3/10 away from the leading McLaren. It's Piastri, Norris, Verstappen the top 3, Leclerc, Tsunoda the top 5, Hamilton, Russell, Gasly, Hülkenberg and Ollie Behrman the top 10. This is the sound of Jack Doohan. We're just getting a replay of. Has he had a squirm with the wall over the crest at turn 22? He's just getting rather close, 10 centimetres away from the wall, according to the graphics that we're seeing.
Miles away.
He can afford another 7 at least.
Yuki Tsunoda was close yesterday, wasn't he?
Bit too close on that front.
Close. No, but he's. I think Jack Doohan, there's all this press again about him, and is he going to keep his seat? I don't think he's doing a bad job. Yes, he had a shocker in Suzuka, granted, but I don't. In terms of relative pace to Pierre Gasly, he's been closer to Gasly than Antonelli has been to Russell. Yet everybody is singing Antonelli's praises. So I don't think he's been doing that bad a job, and I think there's some people and places that I think need to just give him time and get off his back.
I agree with you. You know what, to even almost be rumoured to be out of the seat before he'd even turned a wheel in anger, to have to handle all of that, the noise off the track as a rookie. He's still finding his way. He's had a year out of racing as well, being the reserve driver for Alpine. All that chat about Franco Colapinto. They've got Paul Aron as well, signed in their reserve camp. Flavio Briatore being a bit of a puppet master, let's say. I think he's handled himself superbly, and actually I think he'll take confidence from the fact that he is not that far away from Pierre Gasly. I think he used up too much of his tyres last time out in Bahrain. Otherwise, I think he was on some points there. But again, that's something as a rookie driver that you're constantly learning with every track you go to. Bahrain, he's been there before. It's a track he knows well. He'll know this track too from his Formula 2 days. But of course, these cars are at 14 seconds a lap quicker over one lap, so that confidence will have to come even more so for doing. But I also wonder, he has got a name to him, and that brings pressure. I know it's not the Schumacher four-wheeled name, but his father Mick was pretty special in two wheels.
Exactly, but I don't think that pressure is anywhere near what, let's say, Mick Schumacher had to go through with his dad. It's different if your dad was great on two wheels and he's doing four wheels. I think if he'd gone down the MotoGP route, it might have been a little bit different for him with regards to pressure.
Well, either way, let's see how Doohan evolves. There were rumours that the deadline for Doohan to be replaced or not has been extended to the British Grand Prix. How apt that is, we shall wait to see. But I think the team also trying to maybe protect him a little better than they have done since they brought him into Formula 1.
Well, I think as well, they obviously saw the backlash with what Red Bull did with their driver lineup a few weeks ago, and how that was received worldwide, and maybe thought we can't really do the same thing, otherwise we're going to get massive criticism as well. So, yeah.
I mean, how do you think Yuki Tsunoda has fared so far? This is his third round with Red Bull now. Obviously, he's had that crash, but he seems to have been a better fit than Lawson was in the first couple of rounds. He's closer,
but I don't think anybody's going to be much closer to Max Verstappen. That car is built around him, built for him. Plus, he's a once-in-a-generation talent. So to be 2/10 off him, 3/10 off him isn't a bad job. It's just not. It's just that car is no longer the quickest car out there. So, when Perez was 3/10 off or even 4/10 off, there was a time where he could still come second. Now, being 3 or 4/10 off Max Verstappen means you're P10 or P11 because it's so tight in the midfield. This being the last year in the regulations, he falls into a category where there's a lot of other quite quick cars, and that's the difference.
Sainz has just gone fifth, by the way, in the Williams. Okay, playing devil's advocate here, do you actually want a generational talent in your team? Because after a while, as we're seeing with Red Bull, if they can't deliver that talent a car that even the talents of Max Verstappen can extract anything good out of, he's going to go, and then you're stuck with a car that's revolved really around one driver, and the development has gone in that direction. Once he's gone, where are you as a team? How do you handle that one?
You look at the Max. It's really different. Of course, every single team on the F1 grid would love to have a Max Verstappen in their car, because you know that if he's in your car, you're going to be extracting the maximum amount of points. He doesn't really make mistakes in races anymore, that like he did when he was younger. He's always superb in qualifying, so you know that he's going to be right up there. But it's him leading the development it's important, but at the same time, you've got to have a car that can be driven by both drivers.
I think it was James Vowles that was speaking earlier today that said actually that there are still a lot of downsides to having a Max Verstappen in your team because of scenarios like this. Also, there's 75 million downsides as well if you're having to pay for somebody like Max Verstappen. But especially coming back to your George Russell point, why would you bring a Verstappen in and upset the dynamic when you've clearly got something quite good going on now at Mercedes? You've got Russell, who's really stepped into this role now as team leader and performing at the top of his game. Antonelli is a Mercedes protege. They think he is a generational talent. We're still seeing him evolve in Formula 1, but that could be a nice complementary lineup. Why would you then upset that for Verstappen?
I can't see Max Verstappen going anywhere, to be honest. I really can't. I think that he's nailed down at that team, and they'll pay him what he wants in order to stay, to be honest, because let's face it, without him, where would they come? What would they do?
Well, you'd look at where their second driver is finishing, and that would be their ceiling.
He's not nailed down at that team. He has a contract till the end of 28, and if they can't provide him with a winning car, he'll go somewhere else.
But where would he go, Andrew?
Wherever it wants him, if he thinks it's quicker.
I liked what you said yesterday about the sabbatical potential.
The main options are Mercedes, Aston if he thinks that Aston Honda can do well, or take a year out if he thinks about not wanting to be at Red Bull next year. I'm not saying he will leave Red Bull at the end of this year, but it's definitely a possibility. But I don't know how big a possibility. He's not answered the question. He just keeps saying, I'm relaxed, everyone's talking about it, I'm not talking about it. Well, he's not talking about it publicly. He's probably not talking about it privately yet, but he is definitely keeping a watching eye on what's happening at that team and other teams. There's obviously the issue of the engines changing next year, and the cars are changing next year, so it makes any decision much more difficult. But, excuse me, I don't think he'll stay in Formula One just to make up the numbers. That's not Max Verstappen. If Red Bull can't provide him with a winning car, and that's the key line in the contract, it has to be a winning car, then he'll look elsewhere.
He wouldn't do what Fernando Alonso has ended up doing.
Look, you can never say never about anybody, can you? I don't think
but right now, Alonso is making up the numbers.
When Fernando Alonso was in his pomp, when he was winning races with Ferrari and McLaren, you wouldn't have expected him to spend 10 years plus in non-winning cars. You wouldn't have thought it was even a possibility. You certainly wouldn't have thought he would want to do it, because it was all for him. It was all about success and winning that third title. And bless him, he's 43 years old. He's still trying to get it. He's still trying to win his first race since 2013. But Verstappen says he doesn't want to stay in Formula 1 till he's 40. Well, as I was saying yesterday, it's easy to say that now, but if you're being paid as much as he's being paid to drive the best racing cars in the world, are you really going to get paid a tiny fraction of that to go and drive a less good racing car in a series that's less interesting for you? I don't know. I'm not saying it won't happen, but you can't predict anything, Harry, because we just don't know at this stage. But
it's fun to speculate, isn't it?
It is possible that he will leave before the end of his contract. And as for Mercedes, Toto Wolff, as far as I'm aware, there's been no new conversations between Mercedes and Verstappen this year. There were definitely conversations between Wolff and Verstappen last year, because both of them said there were. I don't think Toto Wolff's going to have got any less keen to have Max Verstappen in his team if he can get him. But that's not the same as him being able to get him. And why would he go to Mercedes? Why would Mercedes take him? Well, for performance, basically. Because yes, George Russell's been doing a great job this year. But if I was to do a straw poll of you two, if you put Max Verstappen in a Mercedes, would he make it go faster around any given circuit than George Russell by a bit? I think you'd probably say he would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he would. It would just feel harsh. It would feel really harsh.
Well, that's Formula One, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you look at Carlos Sainz last year losing his seat to Lewis Hamilton, and on current form, okay, Carlos Sainz hasn't necessarily been brilliant at Williams, but on last year's form at Ferrari and Lewis's form,
he had his best year,
Ferrari, would you say that was a great change for Ferrari right now? Obviously, economically, it was a stunning move by Ferrari, with their share prices going through the roof. But right now, I'd say Lewis is not struggling, but he's still trying to find his feet, isn't he, in the Maranello Red?
Yeah, he is. He's currently in the pits and down in 9th, about 7/10 off. Meanwhile, his teammate Charles Leclerc, who is looking in that race to be best of the rest behind the McLarens, up against the likes of Max Verstappen. Although I tell you what, George Russell is out there on track now, making his way through the right-hander of 17, feeds you out through the left-hander of 18, spits you out almost through then the long drive down through 19 and 20. He was fastest of anybody in the first sector. Piastri has now taken that, and Norris is out on the lap as well. This is just giving us a little taster about what we can expect when we come qualifying later on under the light. It's going to be a spectacle, but Russell is blisteringly fast right now, but the McLarens are right behind him and picking him off with every sector that goes by.
Yeah, we're lighting up green here on the timings as we see George Russell coming towards the line, blasting towards the end of the lap. What's it going to be? And it takes him fastest, 2.5 tenths quicker than Oscar Piastri. But let me tell you, Oscar Piastri is on some lap as well. He rounds the final corner, foot to the floor, DRS open now. What's this lap time going to be? It is 7 tenths faster. The track is ramping up. We've lost 6 or 7 degrees of track temp, and that's made all the difference. Lando Norris goes P2, and the McLarens are working beautifully, aren't they? 7 tenths clear of George Russell in third.
That is ominous. I know we have all the caveats of this session being in the daylight with all the temperature, but even by the middle sector, Piastri was 7 tenths up on himself. And Norris, though, still about 1.5 tenths behind, but then it's 7 tenths to Russell, another 8, almost 9 tenths to Albon. Antonelli is over a second adrift. Let's see what Verstappen's got in the Red Bull, and Charles Leclerc is also on an outlap as well. Now, Leclerc has looked good. Tsunoda goes up to 5th, but he's still 1.1 seconds adrift. We'll wait to see what Verstappen does across the line. The Dutchman is there now. What's it going to be? And he only goes up to 5th, 9 tenths off. Wow. So Red Bull, even though that looks like an improvement on last week, it's still pretty much a second off for both drivers at this stage.
Alex Albon up in 4th, Harry. It's a really, really solid job. That Williams is working really, really nicely. I expect the times to get even quicker, though. To be honest, I think these last 15 minutes, the sun is starting to go down. We're going to see that track temp fall just that little bit more. The track is just ramping up and getting quicker and quicker. Drivers able to push harder and harder on these soft compound tyres. But the fact that Verstappen radio...
Again, it's weird engine braking.
So he's reporting weird engine braking, but if the track ramps up even more, it's so impressive that McLaren are able to do that. If someone beats them, I think it's absolutely fine, because Q1, Q2, Q3 are small periods of time. So if somebody beats them as the track is improving and the track temp is coming down that much, I don't think they'd be too worried.
But again, it comes down to being on the track at the right place at the right time, so you're almost getting last lap across the line, really. You don't want to be on the fringes of being knocked out while everybody else is on their final flyers.
Well, I think they've got enough pace to go out at the beginning and get the job done, to get through...
And never reappear again.
To Q2, certainly, but from Q2 to Q3, I think they'll be wary of the fact that the track is ramping up, and they might wait a little bit longer than they will in Q1, that's for sure. Charles Leclerc pops up to P4, Harry.
Yeah, decent lap when you compare him to the Red Bulls. He's ahead of Max Verstappen, but he's still 8.5 tenths adrift. Leclerc up to 4th.
So this is exactly the picture that was shown by the race simulation runs yesterday. The McLarens together at the front, miles ahead of everybody else. Russell and Leclerc next best, very closely matched. Leclerc just a 10.5 or so, behind Russell. And then I wasn't expecting to see Alex Albon's Williams ahead of the Red Bulls, but there he is, looking like he's having a very good weekend so far in the Williams. Carlos Sainz is still a little bit behind him, but it looks like Carlos Sainz is about to go out for another lap now. And there are some Carlos Sainz fans cheering for him as we speak.
Well, of course, he didn't race here last year. We got Oliver Behrman instead. This is where we had the appendix incident for Carlos Sainz, and then bouncing back in fine form a week later in Australia and taking the win in his Ferrari days. And Behrman got his Ferrari outing and managed to get some points out of it. Behrman is currently down in 11th at the moment, which looks fairly reasonable for the Haas at the moment. His teammate Ocon is down in 15th. Now, did Sainz just back out of that lap massively? He did, yeah, so he's completely backed out of it. So he has gone out again on the soft tyres, so we won't see what he's got this time around. But there's still 12.5 minutes exactly on the clock left, so still enough time for Sainz to show what he's got. Can he get closer to his teammate Albon, who has had the edge on him so far this season, although Sainz felt like he had more to play with in Bahrain, looked stronger throughout the weekend, ended up having to retire with crash damage, but he felt more confident after Bahrain, I think, and he's slowly, a bit like Hamilton, I suppose, new environment, having to get to grips with it.
Carlos Sainz is not only talented behind the wheel, but he's also very good out of the car and learning and understanding about the cars that he's driving. You look at every single season that he's been with a new team, he will improve that team. He'll get more out of that car, and every car seems to benefit, every team seems to benefit from having him in their team. Lewis Hamilton not liking the rear of that car at the moment in turn 1, tried to get to the apex and the rear tyres just said no thank you, and he has to use the escape road down into turn 2.
Runs straight across, and Max Verstappen coming through the first sector. Let's see what happens to him. Does he get caught by a bit of traffic?
Where's that Ferrari in turn 10? That was just ridiculous.
Well, there was a Ferrari, but it was pretty much off the road. Very off the road.
It was in the runoff area trying to keep out of Verstappen's way, so I'm not quite sure what was ridiculous about it.
No, but as a driver, you see that in your eye line, and he will have had a very small hesitation on the throttle, not knowing what the Ferrari driver is doing and if he's going to come back on the track. So I understand the frustration. However, the Ferrari driver, that was the safest place to be. Get right out of the way. This track is very, very challenging for all the drivers getting in each other's way, especially in the high speed section in like end of sector 1, beginning of sector 2 can be fraught with traffic.
10 minutes, 32, 31, 30 seconds remain of this final practice session at the Jeddah Corniche circuit in Saudi Arabia before we go qualifying once the sun has set and the floodlights illuminate this 6.1 kilometre circuit. 27 turns, 16 going to the left, 11 going to the right. We're on the waterfront here next to the Red Sea. It's the third longest track on the calendar. It's the track with the most amount of corners, many of them taken blind, particularly through those, well, they're all high-speed corners, but coming through the first sector, almost like a roller coaster ride where you're holding on for dear life, and then flat out towards the final corner for George Russell in the left-hander of turn 27, seals off a lap around this Jeddah Corniche circuit, and he's bailed out of that one and feeds into the pits. It's Piastri ahead of Norris, and they are a step ahead of the rest of them. 7 tenths between the McLarens and the next best, which is George Russell in the Mercedes. Charles Leclerc not far behind him either in 4th. That best of battle behind the McLaren seems to be between those two drivers. Alex Albon performing well in the Williams. He's up there in the top 5. The 2 Red Bulls actually fairly evenly matched at the moment. Verstappen is clear by a couple of tenths in 6th and 7th. Then it's Antonelli. Alonso's 9th. Carlos Sainz rounds out the top 10. He was on a lap, but he bailed out of it. So we should see, he's in the final sector now. So we'll see what he has got before the end of this session on another run on the soft tyre. Lawson is just outside the top 10 and 11th. Then comes Ollie Behrman. Lewis Hamilton still struggling in that Ferrari. Down in 13th. Pierre Gasly is 14th ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, who rounds out the top 15. Esteban Ocon is 16th ahead of Doohan, Stroll, Hadjar and Bortoleto. The 20 drivers that make up the field, all 20 drivers participating in this session, but 4 of them currently in the pits, as Lando Norris and McLaren are finding even more pace, half a tenth up on his teammate Piastri in the first sector. This is the sound of the British driver who has yet to qualify inside the top 5 at this track. I think that stat may well be blown out of the water come the end of the evening. He is looking neat and tidy, but compared to yesterday, it feels like Piastri has a bit on his teammate so far, but Norris continuing to push up on his own time, and Piastri and a little bit down on. There's fine margins in it though.
How far am I down on the sectors?
7 tenths first sector, 4 tenths second sector, and we are both in last sector.
Jeez.
That's Lewis Hamilton being told how far off he is, and when that first sector is starting with 7 tenths, Sam, I imagine that's pretty demoralising as Norris comes across to the line and, by less than half a tenth of a second, 24 thousandths of a second to be precise, Norris to the top of the times.
That will give Lando Norris a huge amount of confidence. That's the first lap in the session where I think he's really nailed the entire lap. I know that the final sector wasn't his best, but every corner looked neat and tidy. There wasn't a hint of a lock-up. Remember, the tyres are getting older as well. Yes, the track temp is coming to the drivers, but that will fill in with a lot of confidence going into qualifying. Going to Lewis Hamilton's radio, yeah, that's not sounding good for him. And Lewis Hamilton is a confidence driver. He feeds off a positive energy, and doesn't sound confident right now with what he's got underneath him, and he's another driver that beats himself up a little bit like what Lando does, but he needs to find something. It's not Lewis Hamilton-esque to be 8/10 off Charles Leclerc is not where he expects to be, and not where we expect him to be.
We saw this last year though in the Mercedes with Hamilton when it came to qualifying,
but not 8/10.
No,
not 8/10.
But it was his weak point across the weekend. When you boil it down, that was where he was struggling. He was most downbeat after the qualifyings. Never felt like he could fully hook it up, and I just wonder how much of that is the same issue lingering on, and obviously how much then is down to being in a new team. This is the sound of Hamilton now coming through the middle sector, 8/10 down on Norris, but by all things going, that's actually not too bad when you compare it to the rest of the field. We've had a couple of laps in the last few moments. Sainz did get a soft lap in and went up to 7th, still behind his teammate Albon. Gasly's up to 8th now. Antonelli's going to go again. He's on an outlap at the moment inside the top 10. To the line then for Lewis Hamilton. It's an improvement, but it's only up to 12th, and he's 1.2 seconds down on Lando Norris's pace. His teammate is 8/10 off of Norris's pace, but that is the difference between 4th place currently for Leclerc and 12th place for Lewis Hamilton.
Well, Lewis just doesn't look happy with the rear of the car right now. It looks like it over-rotates just when he doesn't want it to over-rotate at the end of braking. Charles Leclerc seems to be on top of that a little bit more. He doesn't mind the rear of the car being a little bit loose, even on a circuit like the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Lewis has got to get on top of that kind of loose rear if he's going to be anywhere near Charles Leclerc in qualifying this evening.
Piastri coming through turn 4, nearly getting all out of shape, almost losing the rear end, having that inside wall. I think that was less than 10 centimetres to the wall, and then just had to clout across the curb there and bail out of that one.
But it's now mind games between these two McLaren drivers. Lando Norris has now done what Oscar Piastri has been doing to him for the last 3 or 4 weekends. Lando Norris has set the bar, and for now Oscar Piastri to try and beat Lando's time, Oscar's got to put the car right on the edge, and we see that when you put that McLaren right on the edge, it's quite tricky to extract a lap time out of it. It's very easy to make a mistake.
Now, Sam, you've spent time, you know Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri a little bit. Do you think we could see a Rosberg, Hamilton,
no.
Prost, Senna?
I know these two. Look, they want to beat each other, absolutely, but the respect between them is huge, and they're not those kind of people.
Don't have grip maintenance though.
Do a double full.
Hamilton saying, I don't have the grip, he just doesn't know. And then Ricky, his engineer, telling him to do a double cool lap. There's a lot of questions for Lewis Hamilton right now, and not enough answers for him. Just back to the Norris and Piastri thing. So you think they're then just not like that? The fact that one of them could get their first Formula One World Championship this year.
Ask me again by about round 20 when I'm back again. I'll be back before, guys. Don't worry. If you want me,
I think you're booked in, aren't you?
I hope so.
I'm
looking at our producer Paddy, and let's see.
He doesn't
know.
No,
he's shaking his head. That's me done.
You're done.
Yeah, okay. I'll take my check and run. But with regards to Lewis Hamilton's radio message, then, if I were Lewis, I'd be wanting slightly more information from the engineer. Okay, he's asked to do a double cool, but what tools can I use to try and manipulate the balance, guys? What do I need to do? Do I need more or less engine braking? Do I need to change the brake bias shape? Do I need to change the bias full stop? What weaponry does he have on that steering wheel to just try and feel a little bit more comfortable, to be a little bit more, dare I say it, Lewis Hamilton within that car? Because right now, when he just says, I just don't have grip, it's not the best feedback, but at the same time, with all of the information that Ferrari have in the pit garages, what can they give him to make him feel more comfortable in the cockpit? It's not always just about mechanical setup changes. The drivers can make a difference from within the cockpit if they're given the best feedback.
So Hamilton's problem yesterday, he said, was getting the tyres working. So the double cool is a technique that you can use 2, obviously it cools the tyres down more than just doing one cool down lap, and the idea hopefully then he'll go into that lap and then the tyres might be in a better window for him. I guess that's what the thinking is, but behind that, but it's clearly still not working for him, because 4 tenths off Leclerc again. It's not where he expects to be.
No, not at all. He's 1.2 off of Norris, and then the difference is, it also highlights the fine margins that we've got going on right now, because Leclerc is 8 tenths off, and then it's only a couple of tenths that we're talking about here, back to Hamilton, but that is 4th down to 12.
Absolutely. Going back to the double call that Benny was talking about just now, sometimes on a single call you don't notice a difference in the core temperature. So it's all good and well the surface coming down very slightly, but you need that core temperature as well to slightly subside, and that's what you'll see on a double call. Not only the surface temp getting a little bit cooler, but also the internal air as well, just getting that little bit cooler.
Well, Hamilton indeed still out on track. Just seeing the 2 Red Bulls put in some more laps on the soft tyre, but Tsunoda unable to improve. He's still down in 9th, 1.1 off. Verstappen is up in the middle sector, so let's see if the Dutchman can work some magic in that Red Bull. Heads towards turn 27, arcs his way through the left-hander of 26 with the DRS open. It slams shut under braking as he makes his way through the final left-hand loop and out onto the start finish straight, shortens the distance to the checkered flag and takes the line in 4th place. So gets a bit closer. Decent lap from Verstappen, 8 tenths adrift from Norris, but closer to Russell, and splits Russell from Leclerc. So Verstappen could still play a part in this best of the rest battle, particularly in qualifying behind the 2 McLarens, as the clock has now chimed down to 0.
I think anybody from P7 to P15 is super close. I'm really excited for qualifying this evening, Harry. I think it's going to be absolutely thrilling. Who can make it out of Q1, and which of the, let's call it, smaller teams can make it into Q3?
It's almost a dogfight in that midfield battle. That is how small the margins are, and you could put in a decent lap and be a 10th off your teammate, but now that's going to be 5-6 positions. It could be. As the checkered flag then is waved at the end of the final practice session of the weekend before we go qualifying under the lights in Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Still some quick cars out on track, just making their way, managing through the traffic. Carlos Sainz still trying to head to the line in his Williams. Equally so too for Oscar Piastri. We'll get some practice starts on the grid as well once they all make their way back around, but nobody improving in these final sectors, and a little bit of foreshadowing for the race as we see Piastri and Norris, I should say, and the Sainz Williams getting a nice toe off of each other. But it is Lando Norris quickest at the end of FP1 with a 1:27.489, 27 thousandths of a second separating him and his teammate Oscar Piastri. Now we're just getting a little look at Alex Albon emerging from the pit lane, going very slowly and into the runoff area, and that was close, Sam. Alex nearly having to drive into the wall to avoid the Ferrari.
He had room, didn't he? Charles Leclerc had a little bit of room, but certainly Alexander Albon didn't have any room. He did extremely well to get out of the way there.
And that is not the first time we've seen that, and I don't think it'll be the last time either. George Russell ended up best of the rest behind McLaren in the Mercedes, 6 tenths adrift. Max Verstappen 4th. Charles Leclerc rounded out the top 5. Alex Albon 6th, ahead of teammate Carlos Sainz in 7th. But the 2 Williams cars looking good. They are ahead of Pierre Gasly's Alpine in 8th. Kimi Antonelli was 10th, just behind Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. Isaac Hadjar 11th for Racing Bulls.
This I feel is the limit of the car. I cannot go fast in corners. It's just sliding from all 4 tires.
Okay.
Charles Leclerc feels he's hit the limit of the car. Well, he was up in 5th. His teammate Lewis Hamilton struggling with grip on his tyres, down in 12th for Ferrari, ahead of Liam Lawson. Fernando Alonso 14th. Jack Doohan rounded out the top 15. Ollie Behrman for Haas was 16th ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. Esteban Ocon 18th, Gabriel Bortoletto in the Sauber 19th, and Lance Stroll 20th and last. But of course, Sam, as we said, this has all been in the daylight and the sunshine. Cooler temperatures, night time. The Jeddah Corniche circuit lit up under floodlights. It's going to be a bit of a spectacle, isn't it?
Cannot wait. And as we've been saying, the mid-pack is so close. The battle at the front is fierce as well. I really can't wait to see who can take pole position.
What happens now, Sam, in this interim between free practice 3 and qualifying? What are the drivers doing with their engineers in the garages?
I mean, first and foremost, you'll get back in. You'll have a big debrief about the session. Talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of your racing car and what you feel like you need to improve. They'll be speaking about tyres, tyre warm-up, balance, setup, strategy going forwards to qualifying, while having in mind, you know, tomorrow's race is long. They need to preserve tyre life. They can't have a car that is absolutely on the limit for qualifying but then runs out of tyres after 5 laps in the race. So they've got to bear that in mind as well, coming up with some form of happy compromise with your car setup. But these chats will go on probably for the next hour, and then it's about refocusing, getting some food in you, and then visualizing the best laps you can.
Get some white rice in you when it's going to be
some white rice.
It's going to be a spectacle under the lights, so you're going to want to join us. We'll be going qualifying on the BBC Sport website and app 5 to 6 ahead of the session starting at 6 o'clock. It looks like it's going to be a battle between the two McLarens, but join me, Sam Bird and Andrew Benson for that a little later on. But right now we'll hand you back to Kevin Howes and the cricket team.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Sam, and the team there. Welcome back to county cricket, and it's the Rothesay County Championship.